Feeling overwhelmed by shipping complexities and industry jargon? ProShip ParcelCast Unwined is here to help. Join us as we unwind with industry experts, break down complex topics, and make shipping enjoyable with a cocktail in hand. Learn about the latest trends in technology, navigate carrier changes, and gain valuable insights from the pros. ProShip ParcelCast Unwind. It's your one-stop shop for simplifying logistics, one sip at a time. Brought to you by ProShip, the last shipping software you'll ever need. Now, ready to help you ship smarter, not harder, here's your host, Jerry Dixon.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of ProShip ParcelCast Unwind, unlocking warehouse efficiency, the power of data integrations, and AI. I'm thrilled to have two experts joining us today. First up, we have a ProShip speaker with a wealth of knowledge on shipping solutions, Justin Kramer. Justin, will you give a quick intro?
Sure, yeah, Justin Kramer, one of the co-founders of ProShip. I've been selling, designing, implementing, deploying pretty much everything around multi-carrier shipping software for the past 23 years. And that's given me the opportunity to work on very large customers up to 3 million shipments a day, other customers that may span across multiple continents. And I've also gotten a couple of awards for it, but I can't remember the names of them, so we won't talk about that.
Thanks for being here again. And our guest speaker today is a consultant specializing in helping small businesses optimize their warehouses. Aaron, I'm very happy to have you here. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course, and thank you to you and your team for having me on. My name is Aaron Hatfield. I own and operate Hatfield Consulting, and like Jerry stated, I partner with small teams to be able to streamline their efficiencies, not only in-house with processes, but also build out their sales team, build out those fundamentals that can really drive those impact and bridge some of those silos that we find with those smaller customers in those growth spaces.
It's so good to have you on with us. Thanks for joining. Today, we are diving deep into the world of warehouses and how to keep them running smoothly. Before we get started, let's talk about the other important piece to this episode, the drink. This episode's cocktail is called Warehouse on Point. The ingredients are rum or bourbon or ginger ale, honey, simple syrup, and lemon juice. And the connection to the topic is this. Just like a well-run warehouse requires accurate data and seamless integrations for optimal efficiency, this Warehouse on Point drink achieves a perfect balance of sweet, tart, and refreshing flavors. So there, I put rum in mine. I think you used bourbon. And Aaron, I think you've got a mocktail today. So cheers to you both.
Cheers.
It's pretty good. Not bad, not bad. I like the topic. All right, experts, let's get started. We are going to kick this off with laying a foundation with a few technical terms like WMS, system of record, and separation of concerns. Many of us know what these mean, many of us do not. So we're going to break down what those mean for our listeners or for people who might be new to this. Aaron, will you take WMS and system of record, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So in its most basic form, WMS stands for Warehouse Management System. And anytime that you enter a facility, that's what coordinates the day-to-day functions between the teams, between the aisleways, packing, picking, etc. And that acts as that jump-off point. A shipment of record, for lack of a better term, could be looked at as the single source of truth for all the information relating to a specific shipment. So it can be the items, it can be the origin destination, additional shipping details, or if it's international, it can be customs documentation along with invoicing, etc. And so really what this provides is the entire life cycle of whatever shipment you're working on to be very visible and to be just that much more trackable and present.
And Justin, will you explain what separation of concerns is?
Sure, and system of record is really a great place to start off with, because you talked about what the WMS is, how that's a system of record. Let's face it, that's where the inventory should live, right? That's a great system to look at to get a good feeling as to what all your inventory is. If you're looking for accounting pieces, you're going to go to the ERP. So already we can clearly see two separation of concerns, a separation of accounting and a separation of shipment execution, inventory, things of that nature. This is a software term that usually we use to break down even a single piece of software like a WMS, like a multi-carrier shipping software. And for example, so inside multi-carrier shipping software, you would separate your UPS components from your FedEx components, from your postal components. You might separate your front end from the back end. By separating these components out, it makes it easier to take a chunk out and replace it. So again, if we go macro again and we look at the entire enterprise software stack, there's a big reason why a lot of companies have just separate ERPs, WMSs, OMSs, shipping software, and many other pieces that make up that greater enterprise software stack.
Now, we've talked about before in the past the importance of accurate data in warehouses. And Aaron, you work with companies a lot around data and how important it is. Can you elaborate on why that data is important and maybe what kind of challenges that businesses might face?
Yeah, absolutely. So in today's environment, especially the economy, et cetera, being able to pull what drives your bottom line and what drives those innovations within your warehousing operations is imperative. So when it comes to data, the warehouses are gold mines, but if you can't act on it, and if it's not digestible, then all you have is a bunch of numbers, which is better than nothing, but you need to be able to highlight the key points that you're and the key goals that your team's trying to achieve to be able to tackle those issues. So for instance, what I run into most often when I'm talking and rubbing shoulders with folks in the warehouse space when it comes to efficiency and data is, one, they have so much of it that they, again, back to the having numbers, is they have the data, but it's such hodgepodge together that they're not able to, again, make that actionable, digestible. Two, it can cause issues when it comes down to damages, overages, shortages, loading and unloading times. And at the end of the day, this all affects your employees because of their efficiency. So if the data that you're pulling is not able to be acted on, then all that's going to do is make those inefficiencies fester and make them grow, for lack of a better phrase, into something that you would wish you had ripped the Band-Aid off earlier on. And so more often than not, that's kind of what I'm running into, but it's a positive. The positive spin on it is people are starting to talk and they're starting to have those conversations.
I've always thought that it's very interesting in today's day and age. We have all the data, but we don't have the right questions, right? So the questions nowadays, a good solid question is more important than the data because we have so much data. As soon as we have the right question, the data can answer it.
Justin,
Absolutely.
what about data disparity between carriers and warehouses? How does that impact operations?
Well, that's where throwing in another software engineering term, normalization comes into play. Yes, there is very different data from every single carrier. Sometimes from even ground to express, there'll be very dissimilar data. But this is where normalization comes into play. You may have delivered, you may have proof of delivery, signature acquired, blah, 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 but we can all agree for this customer, we're going to say all four of those means delivered. Okay, that's the process of normalization. So by getting rid of all of those, the minor differences between the data inputs and normalizing those, we get this ability, or sometimes referred to as serializing, but by normalizing those, we can ensure that we can ask a question and get very good answers out of that normalized data. Whereas it's significantly more difficult if we just throw in the raw data without a level to normalize.
So how does a WMS help address some of those challenges? Aaron, would you like to go first?
I'll jump in here and yeah, no, so a WMS, especially in today's warehousing operation, I think, I go back to it, I think it's a must. You have to have a type of management system and software stack in place to be able to help highlight what Justin was just sharing about, is how do you normalize, how do you uniform the details and the data, but then also it's I want to say it's a hub and spoke in a way, because you have a centralized operations, which I guess, it is a central hub for all of your, especially when it's a multi-facility operation, you want to have that centralized hub of data collection, and then have that feed. The more intuitive it is, the better. But if you don't have that today, or if you don't have some type of warehouse management system in place, unfortunately, it's just going to keep getting harder and harder and harder, especially with the fast-paced environment that, well, I work with a lot of the 3PLs and the operators, and the market today is volatile. It's, we've been in, a quote economic downturn, so people are having to get very creative with how they're able to rebound from some of these, some predicted, some unpredicted change of events, and the supply chain, of course, is always one of the first ones affected. So being able to leverage that software technology to help influence and impact those efficiencies in a kind of chaotic period of time, it's only gonna help you, the warehouse operators and the folks, put their best foot forward.
Yeah, I've got another add on that one, because this goes back to that separation of concerns. If we go back 20 some odd years, there's still a lot of companies that were trying to control inventory, were trying to control packaging, even shipping from inside their ERP. The reality is, if you try to do that today, not only would you have so much separate data, it would be very difficult, but more importantly, you wouldn't have the granular control. One of the advantages of separating your ERP from your WMS is that you have all of these advantages, whether it's receiving and put away, pick pack options, wave picking versus real-time picking, all these other things. These are things that you would not get if you tried to have all of your software crammed together. Quite frankly, I don't know that I've seen a customer look for a mid-market and up multi-carrier shipping software that doesn't already have a WMS.
Yeah, and ProShip works with many WMS systems, right?
Exactly. We from homegrown all the way up to the highest enterprise level WMSs that are out there. But again, that's because as a set of companies, we've separated out and we've created clear doors or interfaces, if you will, to be able to pass the data back and forth. And I mean, worst case scenario, there's still some old school ODBC, even some old school flat files. But in some cases, for some companies, from a security standpoint, that flat file exchange is very secure, because you can't get to the data on the other side, right? So there's lots of different ways to go about it. I wouldn't worry so much about the doors and the data transfer as much as I would worry about the features that can exist inside that particular box, whether that box is an ERP, an OMS, a WMS, shipping software. Then we worry about what the doors are in order to exchange data between them.
Aaron, how do you fit into these types of equations? What can you offer these companies who are looking for this type of help?
Yeah, so what I do with HAFU Consulting is I partner both with warehousing operations or warehouse operators, but at the same time, solution providers on the software side that would make sense and provide practical impact to both. Not all of them necessarily play well together, but being able to find those bridges and help both sides of the equation. One, from the software side, is get their, get that market share, get that growth, get their name, and be able to really share the impacts that they can have. But then on the warehouse operating side is a lot of times these folks are just running around busy as can be, especially in this marketplace. Well, and you folks know from a multi-shipper standpoint, or excuse me, a multi-carrier standpoint, is their time is very valuable, very precious, and to get a sliver of it, that's a big deal. So I partner with them and help alleviate that burden of say, hey, I know some folks, let me work with some of the connections and the industry professionals that I know to be able to help bridge that. And then I always tell people, let me help you do what you do best. And then I will come in and just fill those gaps and be able to coordinate that.
Now, we've talked about the challenges of integrating separate WMS and shipping software before. But are there any benefits to consider despite the complexities of those?
I think integrations, again, in this day and age, I think are imperative because you have to be able to cross communicate again from the different platforms that you might be using within your enterprise tech stack. So you have to be able to use what software makes sense. But in order to, one, we're going back to the system of record or concerns, et cetera, is having that unified ability to be able to pull that data is only going to help your efficiencies moving forward. And I think in this world, with as technologically developed as we're becoming very rapidly, you're going to have to play well with others. And I think for especially folks in the warehouse 3PL space, is there's ways to bridge those gaps and silos. And more often than not, you got to give a little now to get a little later. And taking the time to have well-oiled, well-functioning API integrations with your solutions, it's only going to benefit you long term.
You need to integrate with not just one solution, many solutions, right, Justin?
Absolutely. Depending upon the size and age of your organization, you may not be lucky enough to have a single modern WMS. You may be in the process of a turnover from, for your multiple warehouses from one WMS to another. Maybe you have acquired or recently been acquired, and there's going to have to be a transition. One of the things that you have to look at with your enterprise software stack is, can it communicate with multiple host systems? That's what we usually refer to it, whether that's a WMS, OMS, ERP, whatever. Can it communicate with multiple host systems simultaneously? Can it maintain multiple sets of business rules, either because you have different contracts with your customers, let's say you're a 3PL, or let's say you're more of a retailer, and through acquisition, you need to maintain not only the value brands, but the mid-market brands and the premium brands with different business rules. So there's a lot that comes into play around this, not just a very simple, can I plug it in and make it get done? Mm-hmm. I used to say a lot that if everybody did best practice, there would only be one company in the world, right? Because nobody would try anything different, and whoever had the best margin would put everybody else out of business, right? Yeah. So the reality is we expect that we're going to be 75, 80% best practice, right? We're going to be using these crisp, RESTful JSON APIs. And then for the other 25%, maybe there's a flat file or two or an old TCP/IP connection or something like that, right? We know these things happen. And therefore, as a good vendor, as a good partner to your fulfillment process, your partners should be able to be flexible and work with you with these uniquenesses that have to exist in each of our businesses.
Speaking of being flexible and software, when a customer is considering their complete enterprise tech stack, how much is too much? Should every shipper have a WMS, OMS, ERP, accounting software, et cetera, et cetera? Should they have a Panda? Should they have all sorts of warehouse equipment? How much is too much?
Yeah, I come from a very different end of the market, Aaron. You might actually be a lot better to start talking from new business up.
Yeah. No, especially from my space, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Is, working with a lot of these up and coming, not only solution providers, but also, in conjunction with these warehouse operations, It's very, well, I think a lot of folks are realizing, especially after 2020, they're very quickly realizing what is actually too much. And, but is what I come across a lot of times is people get software happy or equipment happy because, you know, I like gadgets, right? My wife always has to get on me when I go into like a store because I'm like, oh, it's a laser pen, like I have to buy one. You know, is it's like, you know, with the folks that I'm working with, every now and then you come across that. So what I always encourage folks to do is, one, I do think a WMS, if not in place already, is, again, like I said earlier, a must this day and age in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I always try to take the folks that I work with just a couple layers deeper, is saying, know where you are, know where you're going, and know where you want to be. And now, when you're at each stage of those, what is, one, realistic financially for your organization? That dictates really 90% of the conversation. But then set and plan a place to, yes, you know, we have this WMS. Okay, if we do see a need as we grow for accounting software, absolutely add it. Is with the, again, from this side of the space, as we're growing, I think every operation should be software heavy. I think a lot of what folks are doing nowadays can be automated or just refined, utilizing the technology that's being developed. So I think as we grow, especially, it's not is how much is too much. Whatever doesn't make sense for your team and your strategic growth at that point in time is where I would start that conversation. But it does not mean wipe everything else off. Is then, okay, you know where you're wanting to go. So, you know, plans change, but have a framework to then take these steps and build on those additional software functions.
Set the framework first before you start making decisions on all of the things. And you guys had talked about looking ahead. How do you see technology like AI impacting warehouse management in the future?
Okay, so I have, as a software engineer guy, as a guy who tinkers in the evening, and as a guy who probably plays way too many video games just as part of my profession. Yeah, that's what I tell my wife, right? I have to play this game. It's part of my profession. Anyways, AI is great. AI is exciting. AI is going to continue to modify the world, just like the interoperability between enterprise software stacks component has radically changed the way we see automated warehouses nowadays, okay? But it won't do everything. There's a reason that in 2021, when I first got into this industry, the number one concern was labor, okay? What's the number one concern right now? It's still labor, right?
Wow.
Because there are still things that people do better than whether it's robotics or whether it's software, okay? And there are other things that software does really well. AI, as it exists today in 2024, is good at predicting things, right? It is basically taking that college statistics and combinatorics class that you had to take in order to get whatever degree you got. You had to pass through that gauntlet, right? It is taking that to the nth degree, where if there is not a calculable answer, if there's not something that go to a regular math class and you can get the answer from it, AI is probably really good at that. So for example, there's only one way to produce a proper carrier label, right? You can't magically put it, you can't have, as we all have seen with some of the AI art, you know, and it produces 6 fingers, right? Well, that label's not going to get to the, if you have that equivalent occur when you're making a label, that package isn't going to be delivered, okay? So things like that, things like the actual cost of the shipment, what that barcode should look like, where those elements should be on that label. Those all have a very distinct answer. Use software that's designed to collect or to create that answer for it, right? On the other hand, what's the best place to put these items that you just received? Well, there's millions of potential answers, okay? What is the best way to have 10 people in your warehouse walk through there? Well, that's going to be very different depending upon who the 10 people are. right? You have the three of us, we're going to be chatting the whole time. And that may or may not affect productivity, right? Where things decided to get put away, again, is going to reflect on productivity. Also, so because of this, there is high probabilities that it's going to change based upon who's in the warehouse and how the warehouse is laid out, okay? Which is going to change from day to day and sometimes hour to hour. In the shipping world, how long is it actually going to take to get that shipment from Hebron, Kentucky to Chicago or to LA? Well, that really depends upon if anything happens to any of the bridges. Is there an inclement weather component going on? All of these other things come into play as part of that. What are we doing again here? We're predicting, we're using probability, okay? So to me, AI is really a great probability generator, right? And so that's where we want to use it. Anywhere where probabilities are involved, not actuals. That would be my 2 cents.
Now, Justin, have you put a shipping request into AI yet, Chat GPT or anything?
No, I usually use Chat GPT when I'm attempting to ensure that I can be understood by people who don't have 20 years of software engineering.
Yes, thank you. Well, it sounds like AI has the potential to significantly transform warehouse operations in the years to come.
Absolutely.
Now, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was just saying, absolutely. I entirely agree. I'm bullish and absolutely echo everything that Justin shared.
All right, so let's get to know you guys a little better. We're going to cruise through a quick round of this or that. Okay. So raise your glasses, take another sip. Ready, gentlemen? First, we're going to do the fun questions, and then we'll do the topic-related questions. Aaron, sweet and decadent chocolate cake or a savory and satisfying bowl of mac and cheese?
Ooh, I've got to go with the mac and cheese. I love chocolate, but I love that savory. I had mac and cheese for lunch today as well. So definitely that one there.
I'm with you on that, Aaron. Though I would like to have the mac and cheese and then maybe the cake.
Right. Yes.
but I would always go with the mac and cheese if given just those two choices.
I like that formula. Okay. Possess the ability to pause and rewind real life or fast forward through boring moments. Justin, you first.
Oh, definitely pause and rewind. Try to figure out where I'm not in alignment with whomever I'm communicating with and be able to solve and remove that frustration in the conversation. Fast forwarding through life, you only get so many days. I don't want to skip any of them.
Already going too fast. What do you think?
Yes, exactly.
Aaron,
yeah, I'd have to agree with Justin on that one. To be able to rewind, that could have saved me a lot of headaches in my younger years too. That could, there's some definite value to that.
All right, number 3, telepathically communicate with any animal on the planet or fluently speak every language on Earth.
Ooh, Justin, you want to go first?
I'll let you go first. My answer is not going to change.
All right. Well, honestly, I had to think about this one actually, but I'd have to go with the languages. I speak. I'm re-getting or back to fluency with my Spanish if I can speak properly right now. But yeah, so I'm working on that, and I spoke French a little bit growing up. So it's a dad who speaks Spanish and a mom who speaks French. I'd really love just to be able to continue on that.
Wow.
Let's face it, we are put here on Earth to communicate with other humans. Okay. I love my dogs and my cat, right? Absolutely. But I think part of that is what we put on them, how we translate their thoughts. I would really, really hate to sit there and just hear, to try to mentally communicate with an animal and just hear buzzing, just the busy signal going on. That would really disappoint me. On the other hand, being able to, I don't know, even within just other people who speak English, speak their esoteric mode specific or topic specific language in
Mhm.
order to minimize the amount of misunderstandings, I don't know what would come closer to having a peaceful life than something like that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, we'll do a couple of topic related questions. Aaron, I'm going to start with you first.
Okay.
Prioritize data accuracy and consistency across all systems, or focus on optimizing workflows and streamlining processes?
So I would have to, I think one begets another. What I would do is focus on streamlining processes first, because in my opinion, if you're able to get down to the root and streamline your processes first, then you go to the data because you have efficient processes, and that data will organically highlight any inefficiencies that are existing still after you work on those improvements with your workflows, et cetera.
Good advice, Justin.
I have to agree, but mine was because there are we already know mathematically how to deal with data which may vary or be inaccurate due to a small sample size or other reasons. Therefore, if we've got great processes, we can deal with bad data through filtering and other statistical techniques. Not to get all the way back into AI, but let's face it, those statistical techniques that led to AI will also allow us to deal with a known level of inaccuracy within our data.
Good advice. Okay, so Justin, I'm gonna start with you first. See live warehouse activity or leverage historical data for strategic planning. Which one? On site or just use historical data?
And the end goal is strategic planning?
Hmm.
That's a hard one. That is actually really hard because it depends upon how broken things are, and I use that in a very broad sense. If things are not broken, if things are looking very good already, I'm going to go to the data. Okay.
Yeah.
If, however, we need to make a hard right turn, I want to go to the people. Okay. That's really what it comes down to. It's a derivation on General Hackworth's leadership style. If he took over a new group of soldiers and they were functional, he would change one rule at a time. Okay. If he took over a group of soldiers and it was unprofessional levels, everything would change. Right. And so in the end, it's really about the people. Right. If the people are functioning fine in the warehouse, there's no need to go there. We can look at the data and we can tell them how they can change because they're professional enough to do it. If it's all broken, we need to start with the people. So we need to go to that warehouse and make that happen. Sorry, that was a longer explanation than I expected to give, but that's what came out.
Aaron, what say you?
I'd have to echo it, what Justin said, and I have to agree. If you have historical data and it's fallible or inaccurate data, that's not going to positively help your strategic planning moving forward. You still might get a rough outline, but it's not going to be as accurate as it can be to influence those decision making. So I think, Justin's point on being active on the floor, seeing those processes in place live, I think that's wonderful advice. And I think it's because some things you have to be in person. You have to see these processes in motion to be able to really maximize what the data sometimes might not tell you because it is skewed in a sense.
Okay. Yeah, I would have thought warehouse visit all day, every day, but that's nearly 15 years of UPS talking, I think. Okay, one last question for Aaron before we do some final thoughts and wrap it up. Aaron Hatfield. Can you tell us if you're related to the Hatfields?
So I am a cousin of the feuding branch down in Eastern Kentucky. So historically, they all went to Wheeling, West Virginia and split from there. And so they went south, mine went to Southern Ohio. And I actually had at a show here recently, I ran into a Hatfield cousin and he showed pictures and so forth. And it's just in this part of the country, it's it's kind of fun.
That's fun. Okay.
Jerry, you've gotta take a step back for our people who haven't been in the country that long, people who might be from the coast and are not familiar with the Midwest lore, or at least the central of the country lore that is the McCoys and the Hatfields.
It's I mean, it's essentially America's first gang war, for lack of a better way to describe it. Is the Hatfields and McCoys in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Feud, and a lot of things went into it. The folklore story that it started over a pig. Whether that's true or not, right. But I personally like to think, at least, I'm not going to get that antsy about a pig. But it's a big part of where I live here, this region. And a fun fact: the Hatfields were originally in West Virginia, and the McCoys were originally right across the Tug Fork in Kentucky. And then over the course of time, the Hatfields, I served with the McCoy in the military, so, and I ribbed him for this. I'm okay saying it. We're far enough now. They more or less won and then moved into Kentucky. So that's, there's a little fun fact of, Appalachia history for you.
I love it. Okay. So what's the key message that both of you would like to leave shippers with as they consider optimizing their warehouses? Justin, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Number one, I'm always going to start with separation of concerns. You really need to ensure that you are having the right logic executed in the right system. Other systems may be able to help, assist, and in very short term be able to take over for those, but we always want to ensure that the accounting system is doing the accounting. Okay, we'll give it actuals. You always want to ensure that the WMS is doing the pick plans. Okay. You always want to ensure that the shipping software is really about high volume shipment execution in order to balance costs versus customer expectation.
Okay. Aaron?
Yeah, excellent advice. And, one thing that I would leave, especially for people that are, I think starting where Justin said is absolutely a great place to begin, because it's going to waterfall and have a watershed effect. But I kind of echoing that, I guess, a little bit, is with any type of buzzwords that come around, I always, in this case, visibility or carrier diversification, et cetera, is go several steps deeper, and because there's multiple layers, and being able to find folks like yourself, and organizations that are able to bridge those gaps, be highly informative yet not overwhelming, and that can clearly explain how this can be strategically achieved is imperative. So I think utilize your professional network, these organizations, but always be sure, don't accept things for face value. Ask questions.
Good advice. All right, that's a great way to wrap things up. Special thanks to Aaron Hatfield and Justin Kramer for joining us today and sharing their thoughts. We've learned a lot about WMS and the integration into your enterprise software stack. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn to hear about our next episode. Until then, happy shipping, happy sipping, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on ProShip ParcelCast Unwined. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a review. We appreciate your thoughts. Looking for even more strategies and solutions to navigate the shipping landscape? Head over to our website at ProShipInc.com. We're not just another software company. We're dedicated to becoming the perfect fit for your unique needs, helping you ship smarter, not harder. Cheers, and see you next time.